Hi, I'm Scott Lindstrom. I do mostly work for the National Weather Service and others where I'm telling them how to use this satellite imagery that they are familiar with. So one of the things I do is I write blog posts, which are a good story, but most of what I'm talking about today is other stuff. For instance, right now I'm working on some short courses sponsored by the AMS SatMock Committee, Satellite Meteorology, Oceanography, and Climatology. There's actually one going on this week and next week. Mine is next week. I'm not double booked this week. But the one I'm talking about will be at the CMM, the Combined Madison Meeting. There's one on Great Lakes. And you always start with a good image. So here's an image from West Sister Island in Lake Erie. And you can almost smell the lake here because it's a nice, brilliant green color. So Andrea, I can't quite see with my bifocals, but Andrea Vanderwood, who's doing this with me, she's a GLERL. So we're combining our expertise on this to create a short course for the students in this investigating lakes in the Western Hemisphere. So both Northern and Southern Hemisphere lakes. This is kind of my introduction to ocean color because I understand that's coming and I need to spin up on that. So she sent me this picture. It looks grotesque to me, but I thought, I wonder what, of course, anyone would say, wonder what VIIRS shows for this particular image. So I went to the VIIRS Today website, and unfortunately 2017 is missing. But the image is at the Jstar Mapper. But I'm a little bit of maybe a control freak when it comes to looking at the imagery I want. I want to create my own imagery, so I use polar grid and geodegrid to do that kind of things. But here is what it looks like in the Jstar Mapper. So it shows up, oh, it's right over there too. I can read that from here. Yes. So we have, here's West Sister Island. So that's where that little lighthouse is. It's a National Wildlife Reserve in the middle of Lake Erie. And this was a hazardous algal bloom. So this is why we're talking about this at this short course that's coming up. So why don't I just use imagery that I find online? Because you can find it. It's everywhere. Like I said, I want to be able to control it, but my big problem is I'll save it, and then I'll want to get something else that's on the same projection, but I'll try to go and get the same projection, but it's always shifted a little bit. So when I toggle between the two, there's this little jiggle that just drives me crazy. So that's one reason I like to create my own imagery. So how do you make your own imagery for a particular event? And I'm going to talk a little bit about polar to grid. So the first thing you need to know is when was the data over, when did the satellite fly over you? People are always asking me that when I'm doing training. How do you know when NOAA 20 is going to come over? Now I know that if you know where NOAA 20 is today, you know where it is tomorrow because it's shifted just a little bit off to the east, maybe 20 minutes earlier, something like that. But SIMS maintains, so the SSEC data center has these beautiful maps that go back many more years than I need, so I can see when this particular overflight happened. And this is for NPP back in 2017 for that same day that I got for the Jstar Mapper. So I could make my own true color. So here's the true color I made just using polar to grid. It's very, very easy software. I don't have the, I can't remember who now, but there were some Graham showed some geodegrid calls that made imagery. It's very simple to use. I'm happy to tell anybody how to use it because it's that easy. So here's what it looked like in the Jstar Mapper. So very similar, but I have specified exactly where I want to look at it, and exactly I put on the geographic, the boundaries as well, and also the lake shore. And you can overlay products. So I've zoomed in here a little. So this is also from geodegrid. Then I also created Oxbow imagery. So I just toggle between the two of these, and you can see this nice relationship between the SSTs, the lake surface temperatures, I guess, over Lake Erie and that kind of grotesque looking HAB that's showing up there. So you can see the water coming in from the Detroit River. You wouldn't think that would be cleaner. It's cooler though, so it's showing up as that nice plume. There's that interesting, anyway, so I toggle between the two of these. You can see the upwelling like around Cleveland to Sandusky. There's a southeast wind here, so there's going to be some upwelling. But this is the kind of thing you can give to a student, for example, and say, explain everything in this image. Or if you're doing a blog post, it's a very compelling image that you can just talk about for a long time. So that's why I like Polar to Grid, because you have this ability to create things that are, the georeferencing is rock solid, and you can toggle between things without any jitter that just drives me batty. And you can show individual bands too. So I didn't do that for this clear sky with this hazardous algal bloom, but I get emails. Kathy never gets emails from me asking for help because I actually walk up to her office and bug her. But I think this was from Yinghui. This is a ice product. And he said, if you have time to try a case, and I always try to have time, can you pick February 1st, 2022 near the North Pole point for the 11 micrometer channel? So again, I went to that website at the data center and said, okay, what actual times do I need? And here we have an overpass that goes from 1455 to 1510. And then I created the image, which is right here. Now, you're looking at that image and you're probably not seeing how really spectacular and beautiful it is. If you go to the blog post, which is linked here, and look at the full resolution of this 375 meter data, this is I05, the 11.45 micrometer, it is just spectacular. I mean, you will weep, it's so beautiful. So Polar to Grid gives you just beautiful imagery that you can use. So I can't say enough how beautiful this imagery is. That's why I love my job. Now here, this is like, what kind of emails does Scott get? So I got this email from Steve Ackerman. I don't know if you know who Steve Ackerman is. He used to be the head of SIMS. Now he's the he's not interim anymore. He's the vice chancellor for research and graduate education. So, someone you want to keep happy. So he got an email from a friend of his saying, I'm looking, I tried to look at this data in NOAA class. You have this excellent SSEC data set. Can you give me an image? So Steve sent me an image, sent me this email, said, can you help him out? And it's, you don't want to say no, even though this isn't really your job because I'm off doing other things. And these kind of emails show up in my inbox. It'd be less, and we are a cooperative institute, and I feel it's very uncooperative to say no. So I got this part is not Polar to Grid. So eventually I created the SUMI NPP data with my kite SV because he wanted an image of Mount Everest. So Mount Everest is in this image. It's actually kind of very close to the granule gap. Okay, mission accomplished. Then he comes back with, I became aware of this event from 2004. Can you produce imagery? Now, of course, 2004 is before SUMI NPP. That's kind of, my knowledge base is pretty good for SUMI NPP and Note 20. I know where to get to the data, but I work in the building with Kathy Strabala. So I walked up and say, I need 2004 data. So she pointed me to NASA Labs, told me what to order, and then I could use Polar to Grid to make MODIS imagery. So, of course, I'm blogging. I like blogging about this, so I made a little blog post. You want to use Polar to Grid to make some nice old MODIS imagery. So here we have MODIS bands 2, 6, and 26. Of course, this is not full resolution. If you go to the website, it's all there, but it's, again, showing something happening on Mount Everest. The story isn't over. So a little while later, I got this email from this person. I've been looking at Himawari data. Can you produce imagery on these days and times when there was a plume apparent downwind from Mount Everest? Now this one was nice because I could use geo-to-grid. So I've been showing you polar-to-grid imagery, but geo-to-grid is just as easy to use. We have a great data center here with a, Himawari Standard Data Archive, so I can go and get the data and use geo-to-grid to make the imagery. So here I just put the simple geo-to-grid calls. So you make a grid that you're going to subsect everything onto. You make the image, and then I put some annotation on it. Put this in a script, and suddenly you have hours and hours of imagery. So I have something that looks like this. So this is looking over the Himalayas, and you can see Mount Everest there in the middle, and eventually a snow plume forms downwind of Mount Everest. So this is an individual who is interested in these snow plumes because back in 1996, I think, he was in the Himalayas and he actually saw a snow plume and took a video of it. Okay. Now, this is an old Jordan Girth joke. How many of you listen to the radio station WII-FM, What's in It for Me? Well, you might be thinking, well, Scott, you're doing all this stuff. It's not any part of your job. What's in it for me? So this is what came out on Tuesday this week. So this new paper in Atmospheric Chemistry and Physics by Ward, who's the lead author, The Formation and Composition of the Mount Everest Plume in Winter. And we have in there this Lotus imagery, and we have Himawari imagery produced just from polar-to-grid and geo-to-grid, so you have these publication quality images that are created from the data using this CSPP software. So I can't recommend it highly enough. It's beautiful. I think then we have just a summary. One other thing I didn't even talk about here, well, first of all, it's free. That's always great, but I really like it because you can create RGB imagery. When I was using geo-to-grid to help create imagery for some RA3 or RA4, I can never remember which WMO is which, but it was in Costa Rica and Ecuador, that might be both of them. They wanted to use a RGB image that used the ozone band, and they gave me what they wanted it to look like, and I could then use geo-to-grid to create it. So geo-to-grid has a lot of things built in, like the air mass RGB, nighttime microphysics RGB, but it's also pretty easy to just create your own RGB. And the nice thing is it's reproducible. So all you really need is the data, and like I say, that is not trivial. To find archived Himawari data or GeoComSat-2A data, that is not easy at all. National Weather Service is pretty good. I mean, NOAA is good at putting stuff into class, so you can order stuff from GOES-R or SUMI NPP or NOAA 20, and you can use polar-to-grid and geo-to-grid and make great imagery. But if you're looking for something from someplace else, it's a little bit more difficult. Thanks for listening. I'm always happy to answer questions. Send me an email. If you want me to make imagery, I might even do that, depending on my time. I also want to say that one thing I really like from some of the direct broadcast sites, for example, the one in Miami, the one at SIMS, I can go there and I can look at imagery. So my request for people who maintain, or I can go to the hippie site at Gina too. So my request for the people who maintain these direct broadcast sites is to put imagery on it. I mean, polar-to-grid will make images out of your CSPP downloads fairly simply, and you can just store them there for a day or two, and then people like me who are interested in the weather that might be happening there can go to your website and download it, and that would be much appreciated by me. So that's all I have. I don't know if I went over or not, but.
Thank you, Scott. Do we have any questions? Mitch.
Another typical of my question.
And you'll notice it jiggled.
Yeah, and Graham was, earlier he was showing CSPP geo using FY4 data. So why didn't you use FY4 data to do that study?
I would not know where to get FY4 data. Yeah,
no, that was what day?
That was this year, 2022.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
or 2021, I can't remember what year that was.
An opportunity to update your paper, because I think you're going to see much better.
I was also thinking, why don't I just use GK2A, because that's not quite so off nadir.
Yeah, that's true too.
But I had access to the Himawari data.
Anyways, just a thought.
Yeah.
I think there's even, I'm not sure if there's an FY4 over the Indian Ocean at that time too. Anyway, something to look at.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Is Steve trying to climb Mount Everest?
So I think he goes by Ward. So my co-author Ed, I've never met this guy. All I know is he knows Steve Ackerman. But Edward or Ward Hidman, he's been in Tibet. I don't think he actually climbed because he's retired now, and that would have been, well, maybe he did. I don't know. I guess I should ask him. But.
So I'm going to ask a question, Scott. In that zoom of the snow plume coming off of Mount Everest, and as you said, it's jiggling around.
Right.
Did you try running that through some software that would stabilize it? I mean, you can do that with your, at least you used to be able to do it with your footage from your video camera. Of course, nobody uses video cameras anymore.
I did not try to, frankly, I was because this was just something I was kind of doing on the side. I just wanted to keep it as simple as I could and say, the Himawari, I was a little surprised that the Himawari georeferencing was so jiggly there. But I have zoomed, I really zoomed in a whole lot there. I did not try to, go from one image to the next and shift things to make it a smooth animation. Because I didn't want to have to explain what I was doing to the reviewers.
Sure.
I just said, I just used GeodaGrid.